Good evening, everybody. My name is Eric Parkinson. I'm Director of Programming at the Gloucester Writers Center, and I'd like to welcome you all to this exciting event this evening. I just want to give you a little bit of information about the Gloucester Writers Center, what we do, and then I will hand off the programming, okay? So we are proudly a nonprofit literary writing center, and our mission is to honor and celebrate Cape Ann's rich literary legacy and to empower individuals to engage in writing and storytelling in the spirit of civic engagement. And so, of course, we feel now is a time more than ever for our mission to be taken seriously. So, a little housekeeping. On Tuesday, December 3rd, we will have our last open mic of the calendar year 2024. We can bid this year adieu and find out what exactly 2025 has in store for us. Then that Friday, December 6th, we have partnered with the Cultural Center on Rocky Neck to present the poet David Daniel and illustrator George Cochran, who have collaborated on this kind of really special illuminated poem comic book thing called What Love Is. So I'd love to see some of you there, and we can all find out together what love is. And then, of course, in the new year, we will be back with our usual set of things: poetry, music, workshops, literary walks, storytelling with our storytelling series, Fish Tales, and other things. So tonight, I am pleased to let you know that I will be soliciting your donations, as I always do. You can give to the Gloucester Writers Center by check, cash, or a phone-based payment app for which we have a QR code in the back. And we're very excited to announce that in honor of our speaker this evening, we will be sharing a portion of our collected donations tonight with the Afghan Women's Workshop. It's a pilot program in Lynn, Massachusetts, hosted by the New American Association of Massachusetts, helping local Afghan refugees use their talents to find stable footing in a new culture. So please give generously, dig deep. Now let me introduce you to Nicole Rashan Shul. Nicole is a Gloucester native, writer, and community activist. She is a licensed mental health counselor and psychotherapist in private practice in Gloucester. She works with individuals, couples, and groups, and for many years has worked with at-risk populations, including pregnant and parenting teens, homeless families, and survivors of domestic violence. Additionally, thanks to the support of a generous local donor, she has helped us bring back our workshop Riverstones, which was founded over 10 years ago and then unfortunately was taken offline during the COVID pandemic. And Nicole has graciously come back and helped us bring that back to people here in Gloucester. So tonight she will introduce Dr. Sima Samar and be in conversation with Dr. Samar after we hear a reading from this important new book. So let me get out of your face. Nicole.
I have 3 strikes against me. I'm a woman, I speak for women, and I'm Hazara, the most persecuted ethnic group in Afghanistan. So begins Outspoken, the story of my life by Dr. Sima Samar. Dr. Samar is a physician, the former deputy chairperson and minister of Women's Affairs of Afghanistan, chairperson of the Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission, and founder of the Shuhada organization, which operated more than 100 schools and dozens of hospitals and clinics in even the most remote and war-torn areas of Afghanistan. Dr. Samar is a change maker. She's a lifelong advocate for human rights and particularly for the rights of women and girls. She is currently a visiting scholar at Tufts University's Fletcher School. We're honored to have Dr. Samar here with us tonight to discuss the recently published autobiographical account of her journey as a renowned human rights activist and physician, and her struggles and her triumphs in advocating for women's rights, education, and justice in Afghanistan. Born into a conservative society, Dr. Samar's early years were shaped by the deeply patriarchal environment in which she lived. Despite facing numerous challenges, including societal norms that restricted women's freedom and opportunities, Dr. Samar pursued education and became one of Afghanistan's first female doctors. As the political landscape of Afghanistan shifted, especially during and after the Soviet invasion and the rise of the Taliban, Dr. Samar remained an outspoken advocate for the rights of women and marginalized groups. As she describes herself, it's hard for me to keep my mouth shut in the face of injustice. Yes. Outspoken also highlights Dr. Samar's time in exile, where she continues to champion the rights of Afghan women on the international stage. Her work has earned her global recognition, but it has also placed her at odds with powerful factions inside and outside of Afghanistan. Through her memoir, Dr. Samar reflects on the intersection of her personal experiences with the broader socio-political movements in Afghanistan. Her story is one of courage, resilience, and a tireless commitment to making a difference in society where change can often seem impossible. Outspoken has been called a book of miracles, which indeed it is. But ultimately, it is an unparalleled testament to the power of one woman's voice in a society that seeks to silence it. Sima and I will have a conversation, and then we'll open up the floor for questions after that. Okay. So Sima, I thought we could start, a little bit in terms of your background.
Yes.
You write about, this is when I first started reading the book, I'll share with you, the minute I was about halfway through the introduction, I was absolutely spellbound. And that's not always true, as you know, especially a book like this. There's so much in it, it's very dense. But I was just hooked right from the beginning. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And very early on, in the beginning of the book, I'm quoting you, what happened to her, this was about Aziza, what happened to her was one of the events that shaped my thinking about the conditions girls and women live with in my country. Can you talk about your journey and a little bit about what inspired you?
Okay. First of all, thank you so much for organizing this program, and thank you for you all coming in this cold, windy, rainy evening to listen to me. And it's my pleasure to be here. Yes, I born in Afghanistan and I grown in Afghanistan, and I went to co-education school in Afghanistan. Today, unfortunately, my sisters, my daughters in Afghanistan are not able to get education beyond 6th grade. I born in a family. My father had 2 wives, and I'm a daughter of the first wife. And my eldest sister, the first child of my parents, called Aziza is her name. And it is so sad to talk about her, because she was so young and crawling when my father and my mother, both of them, got typhoid fever. And while she was coming to my mother, my father told to my uncle's wife and said, "Can you take care of her? Then I will give it to your son." I mean, this was maybe, it is so common, unfortunately, still in Afghanistan society and conservative families, but I'm not sure if my father was serious on that moment, but he wanted to protect her, not to come to my mother, who was already sick and they were in bed. So this gone by, and when my sister was around 18 or 19, she just finished 18 years old, her age, when my uncle claimed that my father promised and his son wanted to marry my sister. and she was not happy. But my father really tried to convince the brother and the family. I mean, they were, unfortunately, we were living together, or fortunately, I don't know, my father was living with all the property and everything was together with my uncle. So he couldn't convince my uncle. So all the tradition and the relationship within the family and everything, she was forced to marry my cousin. But my cousin and my uncle took her to our village in Ghazni. We are in Ghazni, but my father was working in Helmand. Helmand was, there was an American project in Helmand Valley project, which was actually quite a good example of development compared to the recent years of the US engagement in Afghanistan. But anyway, then they came back, and after 1.5 years or 2 years of her marriage with my cousin, and they were actually pushing her to get pregnant. And she was taken to the doctor that she is not getting pregnant, that she got pregnant, and she was pregnant with her son 7 months when her husband, and my uncle's wife, who was living with them, all three of them got hepatitis, jaundice. And the other two recovered, but my sister, unfortunately, she was pregnant, and she had a stillborn baby, the boy, and then she went to hepatic coma, and she died in the hospital. What she was always telling me, because when she grown up in Helmand, we didn't have a school for the girls. But she always was encouraging me that I should study because she didn't have the chance to go to school. Although I think my father taught her in the house, that she was able to read and write and do the simple math. But she was not able to go to school to get a formal education. And she was always saying that, telling me to seriously get the education, and that would be the chance to survive, or to not to be in her position. And that is one of the issues that I really tried very hard to study, and it was, I think it was much better situation 60 years ago when I gone to co-education school, and I studied in co-education school, and I graduated from medicine in Kabul. But my people and and the girls in Afghanistan and women in Afghanistan are not allowed to get education, unfortunately, under the current regime.
I was thinking about what the people of Afghanistan have faced, over the last decades, with, the Russian invasion and the rise and fall of the Taliban, and the U.S., what was it called? Operation Enduring Freedom, yes. And there's a phrase I saw, I think, in the book, describing Pakistan as the graveyard of empires.
Afghanistan, yes.
Afghanistan, yeah. And can you talk about that a little bit? And
yes, as I said, Afghanistan is still a small and poor country, underdeveloped, but we were not rich, but it was in a right phase, I would say. People were living in peace. There were some discrimination against some ethnic group, but it was not in this level that we have today after 50 years, actually. We had a king who was in power for 40 years, but then we had his cousin did a coup d'etat and removed him from power when he was in Italy, actually. But in any case, I mean, there were small development projects, but we were in the right direction. They were starting some schools in the far villages because of the poverty, of course. And they started hospitals in different places, and we had family planning in the hospitals. Today, the woman in Afghanistan doesn't have access to contraception. It's not allowed to use. On that time, I mean, when I was maybe 10 years old, we had a family planning program in all the hospitals in different parts of the country. When the mothers were going to the hospital, either they are pregnant or they were breastfeeding, they were giving all the information about family planning, and they were giving some food and iron pills and folic acid and so on. But that is not as organized as it was 50 years ago in Afghanistan. So what's happened then, we had, because we were close to the USSR on that time, now the country is like Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan, all of our northern neighbors or free countries and independent country, but on that time they were all under USSR. So we had close relationship with USSR because we were neighbor, actually. We had also Afghanistan was a buffer between the Western countries, the US, and also the USSR. But then USSR gives some scholarship to Afghan young army and police. Police was actually supported by the Germans on that time, to the army. And then, of course, the influence of the ideology was in the country. So there was a political parties close to the USSR ideas. We called Khalq and Parcham. Khalq means masses. Parcham means flag, actually. There was two political parties which was close to the USSR. And then the president of Afghanistan at that time, Daoud Khan, which was the cousin of the king, he wanted to have a kind of a better relationship with the Russian, because they were taking the gas from Afghanistan in a very low price. We had a good quality gas in Afghanistan, and they were taking it in a very, very low price because they were close, and it was possible for them to just build the pipeline to Uzbekistan, which is our neighbor out, actually. So he went to Moscow. I think they didn't had a good meeting with Brezhnev on that time. So when he came back to Afghanistan, he planned to be closer to Iran and Pakistan and tried to actually build a relationship with those countries which was closer to the US or ally with the US. At that time, Shah in Iran was in power. And they were close to the administration here. And he went to Iran and Pakistan. And then he was thinking that he will have, because a lot of laborers, young men actually, was going to Iran to work as a laborer in Iran, but not in official terms. I mean, in order to, he wanted to protect those Afghan laborers to make a relationship with Iran and Pakistan, which the USSR didn't like, of course. And then they promote a coup d'etat by the army officers which were trained in the USSR, and they were very close to the USSR. We had a coup d'etat in April 1978 by the pro-Russian, and they killed the whole family of the president, even the young children, and they took power. And they start to revolutionize Afghanistan, and it was without really knowing or understanding the culture of the country. They promoted very aggressive way of kind of a socialization of Afghanistan. And then people, they violated the people's right because they restricted the people's freedom of practice of their religion. And also they were going to the mosque, for example, with their shoes and asking the people to ask your God to come and protect the mosque or protect you. Things like that. And they put a lot of restriction in freedom of expression and freedom of media. We didn't have a lot of media, but what we had was already had some freedom. And people start to stand against them. When they start to protest against the government, they didn't have all these new guns or Kalashnikovs or rocket launcher. They started with stone and stick to fight against the government. And then the USSR realized that they are a puppet or they're a supporter or not in a difficult situation. They invaded Afghanistan. And I was a student in the university when for a whole week there was the plane noise in Kabul. And we did not knew what was happening, but everybody was guessing that they might bring some soldiers. But we were so proud of ourselves, and we were saying that it's, as you said, that it's a graveyard of empires. They will not do that. And I remember it was cold, and when I was next morning when we all going to university, actually we had an exam, the final exam of that year. We saw the Russian soldier on the street and their tanks on the street. And of course we protest, the people protest. They were very aggressive. They start arresting people. The people who were not with them, the religious clerics, the elder of the villages, the educated people who were not with them. And that was kind of an arbitrary arrest, and they were arresting people without any reason and without really making a file or access to a fair trial. There were no trial for the people. So that way the fight started. And then we had the Mujahideen who claimed the freedom fighter, but then some of them moved to, already was in Pakistan, for example. Gulbuddin was in Pakistan, and some other people who had kind of a Muslim Brotherhood ideology. They went to Pakistan, and then it was the time for the Western countries and some of the Arab countries to support the Mujahideen and use our religion, Islam, as a weapon of war, unfortunately. And that was the reason that the Islamic Revolution was allowed in Iran. And Shah had to leave the country, and and then in Pakistan also the Islamization by Zia-ul Haq, who took the power by coup d'etat, not a democratic country, but unfortunately become friend of US and some other Western countries and Arab countries. So Afghan people were used to be brainwashed and trained. The Afghan children were not, we had a lot of refugees in Pakistan. We had more than 6 million refugees in Pakistan and Iran. So there were no formal education for them, and they took to the religious school, so-called religious school, because they were feeding and they were giving clothes to these, and they claimed that they were educate them. They brainwashed. They are the one who was running the country now. And I never saw, and I never thought that I will see this kind of a regime in Afghanistan that to put women practically in prison. So we had the Mujahideen, and the Russian left Afghanistan in 1989 after 10 years of fighting in Afghanistan. A brutal war. They did discriminately bombing of the villages. They killed the people. They even destroyed the water points. They destroyed the people's animals. They destroyed their agriculture and everything. So people were pushed to Pakistan and Iran. And then we have unfortunately, that kind of ideology and extremist in the country. And 1989, when they left, and you all know that the USSR collapsed in 1990s. In 1992, from 1989 to 1992, the pro-Russian regime, although they withdraw all of their soldiers, but the regime was able to resist against the Mujahideen. And then I think one of the sad part was that during this war, as always in every country, the men, unfortunately, with all the respect of the men who is in this room, they are actually carrying the gun and they are participating on the war, more active than women, actually, of course. They really did not pay any attention on women, and they did not pay any attention to the provision of quality education for Afghan children. And now, no program for women. Nobody was talking about women in the country. And the extreme policy of extremists and fundamentalists growing in the country. And then in 1992, the pro-USSR regime collapsed and the Mujahideen went to Afghanistan. And they really established a government and divided the different seats among themselves, and Peshawar, Pakistan was very active on that case. And they did not really talk about women's rights. And I remember when they announced their government, one of their representatives came to see some of the refugees, because I was active and I was running hospitals, so I was also invited on that meeting. I said, I mean, how can you run the country without women? And no woman is involved. I said, do you have any plan for promotion of women and participation of women or inclusion of women? He said, yeah, we are making a maternity hospital, 50-bed maternity hospital. And I said, that is not a very big job. It can be done by an NGO. I'm running a hospital, so I am building a hospital in Afghanistan, so it's not a big deal what the government want to do for promotion of women's rights. And they started actually to restrict the rights of women during Mujahideen. And then the Taliban is the second generation of that regime, unfortunately. I mean, as I said, I lived in Helmand, which is a quite conservative area compared to the other part of the country. And I never faced any harassment by people. When it was time for, I mean, the school uniform was skirt and socks. And we never had this kind of hijab that the Taliban push in Afghanistan. Burqa was not common in the rural part of the country. It was the city women who wanted to wear them, and it was not compulsory, but the people who wanted to wear, they were wearing. And it was not a rule by the government to wear which kind of clothes. It was rule in the school, actually, with the uniform. So that was different Afghanistan than today, unfortunately.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you could just sort of paint a picture of once the U.S. came in, a picture of what life became, what happened, you know, to the human rights and to the rights of women and children, you know, at that long period of time when the U.S. was occupying Afghanistan.
Yeah, once the USSR collapsed, I think the US, I believe I saw it, the US completely withdrew their support from Afghanistan. Afghanistan was not in the agenda because they achieved their goal. The goal was the destruction of USSR and stopping the advancement of USSR to the South Asia. And Afghanistan was left on its own. So the Mujahideen went to Afghanistan and they started fighting among themselves for power. Not to actually, the aim was not really to establish a post-USSR inclusive government or democratic government. The aim was to keep the power in any price. So they start fighting among themselves. They killed a lot of people. It was more destruction in the cities during the Mujahideen government, unfortunately. But the Mujahideen actually started to restrict the women's freedom and access to a lot of benefits that women deserve to have it. Just to give you an example, one of the ministers who belonged to one of the fundamentalist group, who was the minister of mine, he went to the ministry because they divided them different ministries among themselves in Pakistan. Actually, when they went to Kabul, they already had the possibility to go to that ministry. The minister of the mine goes to the ministry and he says that women should not come. Of course, all the staff wants to greet the ministers. And he says the woman should not come today to see me. So next day he came with a bunch of scarves. It's a Pakistani style of scarf. It's a bigger scarf. And he distributed the scarf to the female staff first, and then they should wear the scarf and come and see the minister. So, and then this is between 1992 to 1996. And 1994, I remember it very clearly because I was following the whole thing. And I was not far. I mean, I was in Pakistan in the border as a refugee, and I was running clinic and schools in Afghanistan and also in Pakistan for the Afghan refugees. So every day with Afghans. Millions of thousands of Afghans, but millions who were living in Pakistan. That they announced that women cannot present of course, music was not allowed. Women cannot sing. This was during Mujahideen, and they said that they cannot even read the news in the television because their face should not be seen. And then they were putting rows in the television, but a woman journalist was reading the news. But then after 2 weeks, they said, well, their voice should not be heard because they are not, woman's voice should not be heard by unrelated men. So they removed women from the journalism. And there was a conference, the Women in Development Conference in 1994, the population conference in Cairo, the very famous conference. I mean, some people in my age remember that. Afghanistan, on that time, the Mujahideen government did not allow the Afghan delegation to attend. That was the UN conference, so all the UN members should have sent the delegation. They said they are discussing on Islamic issues there, so we do not want to participate. And then in 1995, when it was the Beijing conference, which is again a big UN conference for women's rights, I think it was Clinton time, and Hillary Clinton spoke in that conference. Again, the Afghan government did not send a delegation. First they said, well, we sent a delegation from Afghan government side, but it should be accompanied by a mahram, by their male relative. And then they said, no, we don't send delegation over there because they are discussing on Islamic issues. I mean, everything which was related to women's rights was un-Islamic. And it was really sad because that kind of mentality was even promoted by some of the UN agencies and some of the international NGOs. I started a school for the girls in Pakistan for the Afghan refugee girls in 1990s. And I thought that some of the girls who are 12-year-old and 13, 15-year-old, they don't want to sit with a 7-year-old girl in the classroom. So I started a literacy course for those elder ones. And I wrote the book myself, put all the health information in that literacy book. So I went to UNESCO. UNESCO had a branch for Afghanistan also in Pakistan. So I went to UNESCO and said, can you print this book for me? Because I started the school. And he said, it was an American actually. He said, can you leave the book here and I'll ask my Afghan colleague to read it? We are not going to print anything religious. And I said, there's nothing in about religion. It's only literacy. My aim was while they're learning how to read and write, they will learn some information about their health. And it was about the hygiene during menstruation and some other issues, including the danger signs of pregnancy and also the spacing between the children. I was also very cautious to write about spacing the children and family planning. And he said, leave the book here and come after a week and we can discuss. And after a week when I went, he said, sorry, we cannot print this because you're talking about family planning. And I said, I mean, we already poor, we have more children than we can feed, and then they go to the madrasas and no education, no skill training for them. What will be the future of the country? I mean, on that time in 1990s, it was the World Bank and everybody was promoting primary education, where I was fighting that primary education is not enough. It's only enable somebody to read. And that is not enough. We need some higher education in order to rebuild Afghanistan. But in 1996, the Taliban took over. As soon as they took over the country, I mean, first in 1994, they took power. They said, no education for girls, and women cannot go to the public bath. Public bath is common in Afghanistan because people cannot afford to have hot water in their houses, where people don't have electricity and the possibilities. So people goes to public bath, and it's a small amount of money they pay and wash themselves over there. And it's quite common in the region, not only in Afghanistan, but in Afghanistan also. And first thing they said, no public bath for women, and no education for girls. And they were saying that as soon as we secure the country, and then we let the girls to go to school. Practically, they changed the country as the biggest prison for women. They have to be covered fully. They have to be accompanied by men. You saw some images that they were beating women on the street. They even said that while women are walking, they should not have high heel shoes because their footstep, the noise of the foot, disturbed the men. And I think actually putting their own weakness and lack of self-confidence on women. Because why would you disturb if somebody is walking or you hear the footstep? They put a lot of pressure. I mean, they ask the people in the cities if they have second floor in their houses. they have to paint the windows. Yes, because women should not be seen from outside and women should not see outside as well. So that was the first Taliban regime. And the denial and isolation of Afghanistan caused the country to be a training camp for the terrorists. Afghanistan became the biggest producer of opium in the world on that time. Afghanistan became the biggest prison for women in the world, and currently again it's turned to be. And Afghanistan was also the training camp for different terrorist groups in the country, because some of the people from Arabs and African countries came to Afghanistan to fight against the USSR. And it was facilitated by the others. Remember that Al-Qaeda was established during the Taliban regime when they were in Afghanistan. And then after 1998, when there was two bombs in Africa, in Tanzania and Kenya, on the U.S. embassies. It was during Clinton administration, when then U.S. decided to fire missiles in Afghanistan. They one night in the same time, actually, they fired 85 missiles in Afghanistan, and also in Khartoum in Sudan, because bin Laden was traveling between Afghanistan and Sudan on that time. And we had a lot of Sudanese who was fighting with the Mujahideen against the USSR. Then, unfortunately, 9/11 happened. 9/11 happened, which was, all those people who participated on that attack, none of them were Afghans. They were all Arabs. But we got all the bombs in Afghanistan. We had US decided to come to Afghanistan to intervene militarily and remove the Taliban from power, but quickly announced that Afghanistan is a success story. And you all remember that in 2002, that was during President Bush, when they announced that Afghanistan is a success story, and they went to Iraq. So all the attention was drawn to Iraq. And once again, they were in Afghanistan without long-term strategy, and they were not listening to people also. They don't like the criticism. That's still the case, unfortunately. So we had, again, with NATO came with different countries. At one point, we had 49 countries soldier in Afghanistan. 49 NATO member countries soldier in Afghanistan, including the smallest country in the Luxembourg in Europe. They had 10 people, but they were on the medical side. But they contributed to the NATO forces in Afghanistan. I think with a lot of sacrifice of Afghans in the international community, we failed together. I would say the failure is, the success and the failure were from all sides. It's a collective failure, unfortunately, because the attention drawn to Iraq, and it was a lot of, the focus was on military rather than really building, focusing on the people's, gaining the heart and mind of the people. And I would say that we don't learn from our mistakes.
During that period of time between 2001 and for that 20-year period, can you talk about what life looked like in Afghanistan for women during that time?
Thank you. Sorry. I think with the presence of the United States and the NATO forces in Afghanistan, with all the mistakes that we had, we had a lot of achievement as well.
Yes.
One of the achievement was the access to education for boys and girls in the country, because during the conflict, nobody pays attention on access to education. We hear, we see, because both sides, the government in our case, in the USSR, and also the Mujahideen, both sides was not really paying attention to quality education for the future generation of the country. The regime on that time, the pro-USSR regime, was trying to adapt the same policy as the Russian system, as the USSR system, not the current Russian. But the other side, the Mujahideen, as I already told you, that they were promoting madrasas rather than quality formal education for the Afghan children. And after the new regime, which I was part of it somehow, because I was lobbying for women inclusion in the process. I was fighting with the United Nations. I was all over in the media. I have to admit that the women in the US helped us a lot during the Taliban, and they were the one who raised the voice. And the campaign Stop Gender Apartheid, because almost the American wanted to recognize the Taliban first regime, because they were interested on the pipeline from Turkmenistan to pass Afghanistan. It was Unicol who was applying for that, competing with the Argentina company. But the first thing we did actually was access to education. So we had a big campaign, access back to school campaign for the boys and girls. At one point we had around maybe 8 million children going to the school, although the government was showing the number higher, but at least we were monitoring the access to education. I was the chairperson of the Human Rights Commission. And that was a big achievement. And a lot of young Afghans in different parts of the country, although the environment and the facilities were not perfect, but they had access to education. And it was a lot of possibility for young Afghan men and women to get education. We have a lot of young Afghans who it's different in 1990s. And that was, women were, and the majority of the teachers were female. A lot of women got the training on medical sector and become doctors and midwives and nurses. Women were in sports. We still, some Afghans who are outside of the country now, some Afghan female who got the bronze medal in the Olympic in Paris. We had women as a journalist, we had women behind the camera, we had women in the camera, we had women minister, we had women in the parliament. But the Taliban really continued the fighting. What was sad, actually, that they gave the possibility for the Taliban to reorganize and did not pressure Pakistan enough, because Pakistan hosted the Taliban and gave them the possibility to reorganize and supported them. Now, unfortunately, the Pakistani Taliban are in Afghanistan and causing problem for Pakistan. It's sad because it's, as a neighbor of Pakistan, I really don't want to see the Pakistan to go in the same track that we went. Why would you be happy when the people suffers? The people of Pakistan, I have to acknowledge that they were kind to the Afghan people. They host 6 million or more than 6 million refugees. People of Pakistan is different than the government. I'm against the Pakistan ISI policy in the government policy. It was same in Iran actually. People, they hosted a lot of refugees and they were kind to the people, not the government policy. The government policy is different in both of the countries. Yes, we had all those possibilities. For first time, we had a constitution which acknowledged equal rights for all Afghans. We had a constitution, although I have to admit that the constitution was not perfect, but it has a good Bill of Rights chapter. We had, for first time in our history, we had the Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission, a national institution that had the right to monitor the human rights situation in the country, including all the prisons and detention centers. It was the first time that we criminalized torture. Torture was very common in Afghanistan, and we reduced, of course, the aim was to abolish torture, but we reduced a lot. We were able to monitor the prisons and detention centers, and people were getting accountable for commission of torture in the country. And it was first time that we had elimination of violence against women law in the country. It is not perfect. It has a lot of weaknesses, but it was criminalization of domestic violence, was not treated as a private matter of families and people. We had women as judges, as prosecutors, as police, as army staff, and all is suddenly gone when Taliban took over. And unfortunately, the agreement was signed by during President Trump by his representative, who is an Afghan American, Khalilzad, and Taliban in February 2020. And they were promising the government and all of the people of Afghanistan that they will not withdraw completely. The withdrawal of the troops will be conditional on the situation. But then you saw, all of you might remember the withdrawal of the troops and the situation in Kabul airport. Women suffered most than anybody. I mean, as a woman, as people who have children, to have your labor pain in those packed military plane. And there was one woman who delivered the baby just when the plane landed in Germany, and the other one was in England. And you can imagine to be in that situation and you cannot raise your voice. And I mean, how can you? It was packed. I mean, it was really packed. They put people, as much people as they could, placed in the plane. Now we have Taliban after, in August 15, 2021. And they applied the same policies as they had before. And we were warning all of our partners that they are not changed. They are the same people. And recently they established this law. I mean, the first thing that they said that public baths are closed for women. They allowed the first few months the girls' education and women to the universities, young girls to universities, but they closed down. And now no girls can get education beyond 6th grade, according to the Taliban, yes. No university, no school, no high school. They have to be fully covered, and they have to be accompanied by a male member of the family. With the recent law, which is propagation of virtue and prevention of vice, which was passed by their leaders in 21st of August 2024, actually, practically women should be, I mean, they were already erased from the public life. Publicly, they cannot really show their face, they cannot raise their voice. Some of them recently, last week, they said that they cannot show their face to any other woman. I mean, in the law, they said that they cannot show their face to unbeliever or non-believers. So the Afghan woman's face should not be seen by any foreigner, female even. And their voice should not be heard. And they keep saying that they cannot even recite Quran loudly, let alone singing or... They collected all the music instruments from people's house, and they burned. They proudly announced that they are so proud to burn 21,000 music instruments. What I'm trying to say is, this is not normal. And it should not be normalized. This is human rights violation. And this is a crimes against humanity. I keep saying that it's not only the problem of people like me, or I see Afghan men here sitting. Not only the problem of us, it's a problem of every household, and it's a problem for humanity. And we should not normalize human rights violation, because it's against human dignity.
Yeah, the line that sort of you said in the book was that it took the Taliban less than 9 months to reverse 20 years of progress.
Yeah, less than a few weeks.
Yeah. Yep.
It took less than a few weeks to reverse the achievement that we had for 20 years. And with a lot of sacrifice. It was not easy. It was not easy at all. I mean, I remember that even the government, which was established by our supporters, our partners, but it was a lot of reluctancy on the situation. And we didn't have enough human resources at the beginning. Of course, we built a lot. But it's very unfortunate to see that all of us are out. Or majority, not all of us. The majority of educated people who knew and who got the qualification are out of Afghanistan. And that is not very healthy for the country.
You right at the beginning, you talk about the bombing of the school, and
Yes.
That was early in 2021 or mid 2021?
Yep. It was May 2021, 8 May 2021. I had a meeting because I established a small private university. The aim was to promote women empowerment and promote quality education for the youth, because I do believe that the people of Afghanistan has to take the responsibility. And any policy should be focused or human-oriented rather than only the interest and national interest, so-called, which is more on militarization, unfortunately, and holding power. Why the Taliban stops the education and the quality education? It's because they cannot control the people once they are educated. So particularly for women to be controlled and dominated on every sector of the life is to be uneducated and to promote and implement the policy that they have. Now they establish, they were burning a lot of girls' schools in Afghanistan and different villages. The government was building the schools and they were burning the schools. There are photos that they show now that the school building, which was built during the previous government, with a lot of problem that the government had. I mean, it was a lot of corruption, it was a lot of nepotism, it was lack of strong political will to promote equality in the country. But even with those problems, because of the long war and conflict in the country, we had a lot of achievement. And those school building now is used by shepherd. They just put their sheep and goats in those schools. And they promote the madrasas. They establish almost 20,000 madrasas in the country. For boys and girls, they teach the boys the jihad, the continue of the terrorist activities, and they teach the girls to be obedient wife and mothers, to serve the husband and the children. So that is the radicalization of the next young generation in Afghanistan is very difficult. I mean, they bombed the girls' schools in Kabul. It was 8 of May 2021. I'm sorry, I distracted with all the ideas. I was talking with my team about the establishment of research department in the university, because we had the women empowerment department and we had the peace building department, because I do believe that we need to start the peace within ourselves and then within the family. And that comes when we promote equality. When we don't have a male member of the family as a superior and the female member of the family as inferior. And that itself caused the conflict. So we were teaching the students, the boys and girls, how to build how to promote gender equality and what is the benefit, how to build peace. I remember that we had this gender training and also peace building, that when we finished, it was 3 months kind of courses for, it was not part of the curriculum because the Ministry of Higher Education was still resisting. But we were teaching, the students had the choice to attend. And when we were distributing the certificate for peace training for the students, and I spoke and I said, did you learn? I mean, because it was boys and girls. And one of the boys stand up and said, yes, I learned a lot, because before attending this course, when I was maybe 11 p.m. or 12 p.m., I was calling my sister to bring tea or bring water for me. Now I don't do it, because we are equal. So why she should come, get up and bring water for me? I said, it's simple things, but if you change your attitude, beginning from taking your plate back to the kitchen or drinking water yourself, and even bring a glass of water for your sister, that is the beginning of changes within yourself. And that's the building of peace and equality. So I was talking with the staff about all these courses when my phone beeped, and I looked, attack on the girls' schools. First they said it's rocket, but then it was one attack and next attack. It was the time that the girls were finishing 4:30, around 4:30. And they were a threat. They were not allowing all the students to get out at once because it was really crowded. They were allowing different classes to get out, and difference of 10 minutes or so in order to prevent. And there were attacks before. And it was 4 explosions. The first one was the car bombs, and then another bombs, and another bombs, and another bombs. 85 people killed, girls. The whole street was full of blood, part of the bodies, and it was Ramadan. All these girls were fasting. And you could see the mothers were running from one hospital to another hospital and looking to each bodies, and it was part of the bodies of the girls, and blood on the like the rainwater on the street. 200 something were injured, and their crime was going to get education. And they did not really, they enjoyed killing people. They attacked the maternity hospital. Can you imagine when you're in labor pain and somebody comes and attack you? They attack sports. They attack the wedding. They attack the funerals. They attacked the boys who were playing footballs. And they claim this is jihad. It's not according to our religion. When we greet each other, we say salam. Salam means peace. That is Islam.
I wonder if you could elaborate on the term weaponization of women.
Yes, I think unfortunately there's no full equality anywhere. I mean, yes, we achieved a lot on human rights. We are talking about human rights and equality. But the truth and the reality is the body of women are used as a weapon for political gain. In every advanced countries. I mean, just to give you an example, in Sweden, the previous foreign minister announced that feminist foreign policy, and after the last election last year, they abolished that feminist foreign policies. Now it's, after Sweden was the first, and then Canada and Mexico, Germany and Holland, Currently, it's 5 countries who claim the feminist foreign policy. When the current regime in Sweden, as soon as they won the election, they abolished the feminist foreign policy. Although I have to say that the feminist foreign policy, the importance is not only to use the word, the importance is to how much changes you can really bring in the ground with your foreign policy, feminist foreign policy. Like a country like Afghanistan, when they have the development program or the aid program, how much in reality they change the environment. But they are using as a weapon. And for us in Afghanistan, actually, it's become really a cheap weapon, I would say, because everything is blamed on women, everything. 2 days ago, they collected all the books from the libraries, which was written by a woman. So even if it was a book written by a woman, it should not be in the library, in the bookstores. Can you imagine this mentality? And they forgot that they are born of their mothers? So the weaponization of women's body in this country, unfortunately, we see it. And it's in the other countries also, in Iran and Saudi and African countries. Now they learn a lot from our Taliban.
I have a couple of other questions. One of them is about who you see as Afghanistan's global allies over your lifetime, or certainly over the last couple of decades.
Well, I think it should be the feminist, the woman. It should be, but we have to admit that it's a male-dominated world. We don't have a lot of women who are in power. Even if they are in power, the system is such that they cannot maneuver on their 4 or 5 years of being in power. So I think it's a global issue, and it's a human issue. We all have to stand together and implement all those principles of human rights that we read on the book, and we have it on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights or other conventions. And we should not really use the excuse of culture and religion to suppress and violate the rights of human being. Because in Islam, I mean, the holiest place for Muslims is Mecca. When everybody goes to Mecca during the pilgrimage, everybody is walking with open face, side by side. They pray side by side, with open face, without distinguish of their countries even. But what is wrong in Afghanistan? Are we holier than Mecca? That is a question to the Taliban. But no, they claimed that they are the best, and they keep saying that women are not complete. But if woman, your mother is not complete, how are you complete? You are made from your mother's blood, I would say. Yep.
You talk, I think in the last chapter, Getting to Next, I believe is your last chapter. And you talk about what you feel are 3 key factors in order to move forward, or 3 pillars, I believe that you refer to them. Can you just elaborate on that for people, and also maybe share anything else that you want us to know?
Yes.
That you feel that we'd like to know?
I think that the 3 factors that I believe that we can all live in peace in a more secure environment. One is good quality education, I believe. That good quality education really promote the equality, promote the human rights, promote the respect for human dignity, and give you the possibility to have a better life. An educated woman knows how to space their children, how to have their bodies and to live the life they want. That is one thing. The second thing, I believe that the human rights, the principle of human rights. When we have a proverb in our language, we say that you have to accept all the rights that you want for yourself, for the other people. That brings peace, that brings equality, that brings respect for human dignity. And equality and should be the principle of our life. That everybody is human and everybody has the same right, and we should respect that. And the third thing, I believe that for us in Afghanistan, I think the unity among the people. Again, I would say that we as an Afghan, I think we have to take the responsibility of our country. And the other people, including the US, has to facilitate if they want peace and human security. Security for me is not the silence of gun. That's what we have currently in Afghanistan, and that some people are trying to say the Taliban brought peace and security in Afghanistan. It's not security. We do not want the security of graveyards, that nobody resists. Nobody stand up for their rights. So we want a human security for everybody. And thank you. Thank you all. I hope you read the book. It's not because you're buying the book, it's the money doesn't come to me. But because read the story of a country, of a people called Afghans in a country called Afghanistan from a woman point of view. Because the history is always, most of the time, is written by men. And we all still have a long way to go and fight against the militarization. Bombs are not going to bring us security. Missiles are not going to bring us security. They are made to kill people, so it's not for human security. So we have a long way to go. Let's go it together.
You can stay.
Thank you so much.
It has been such an honor, Sima. Thank you. Are there questions from the audience? And we do have a traveling mic, I believe, if anybody wants to ask Dr. Samar a question.
Thank you. Of course, these are my question. It might be hard to make a quick answer, but who do you think is most responsible for helping the Taliban come back to power, and why did they do that?
It's a difficult question. I would say that we were caught between the superpowers. The proxy war is fought in Afghanistan and is still continuing to fight. And I keep saying that we should not allow and I personally try to say and accept that it's the people of Afghanistan should understand that and should not be used by any power outside or neighboring countries. I keep saying that no one has the choice to choose the neighbors. We cannot choose our neighbors simply when we buy a house or live in an apartment. But we cannot choose our neighboring countries for sure. But we should acknowledge the problem exists among us and find a solution. Well, we blame Pakistan all the time. We blame ISI of Pakistan, not Pakistan people. As I said before, unfortunately. And I think they will be, and it's sad to see. I also want to say that one thing that I used to say, that it's not good to put fire on your neighbor's house. If the fire doesn't catch you, the smoke will reach you. So we should avoid that. Anywhere. Not only in Afghanistan. Yes?
Hi, thank you very much for a riveting time spent thinking about a country that had and then lost its rights at a time when we are facing the possibility, women in America in particular, of losing even more of ours, but also not just women, because first they come for the women, but then they come for everyone. I'm wondering if you have any advice for us as we look forward into the next year or two of facing a possible transformation from within of our country.
One, I think we all have to learn from our mistakes in the past, from our history. Two, we don't have any other choice. We have to resist. And three, use your rights to vote. And I was telling the students, I was saying that please vote to somebody to go in the White House, because it's not only impact the Americans, but it impacts everyone, everywhere. And I think it's not only for the US, but mainly for the US, because we believe that the richest and the biggest power in the current situation is the US. So please send someone good on those decision-making positions.
Hi everyone. I'm asking question from my own language because my English is not good, and I hope answer the English. Salam خانم سیما سمر، خوش آمدی. با آمدن شما امو حرس کمبوتی مادر ما که بود پره شد. خوش آمدی بسیار زیاد. سوال ما است که وقتی ما هم 20 سال در افغانستان در اردو بودم و تمام ولایت افغانستان را گشتیم و وظیفه کردیم و همه دردایش دیدیم و حالا 4 سالی جمع میشه که ما آمدیم. امریکا و جامعه جهانی وقتی که 45 میلیون دلار هفته‌ای برای طالبان داده میتونه، آیا فشار بالای طالبان آورده نمیتونه که اونا مکتبا را و همو زجر و شجره که به خانمات این شده او را کم بسازه؟ تشکر.
It's difficult to translate your question and my answer as well. He's saying that when the U.S. and first he made me emotional because he think that I give him the sense of his mother. And secondly, he says that if the U.S. sent $45 million every week to the Taliban, they cannot pressure the Taliban to revise their policy towards women. And I think they can, but I don't see a political will, strong political will, unfortunately.
Hi. I was in Afghanistan as a tourist before becoming a journalist in 1972, and I was just curious. I mean, about when you were a medical student, you know, when you were growing up, did you have a sense that what has happened could happen? In other words, did you have obviously Afghanistan was for 1,000 years been an Islamic country, but did you have a sense that there was a possibility of a kind of radical fundamentalist Islamic force that could take over the country? I mean, it seems that obviously the U.S. and the Soviets, they were clueless. They didn't know what was going on. You know, they were fighting each other or trying to compete with each other, and they weren't paying attention to, you know, this actual indigenous thing. And I was wondering if people growing up at that time, and when I visited there, and I visited a winery, which and it was an Italian aid project outside of Kabul, you know, and it was a Muslim country, and they were still, you know, building a winery, and Kabul didn't seem to me much different than a lot of other major cities in places where there was, you know, there were a lot of Western influences, there was a lot of education. I met other 20-year-olds, I was that age at the time, who were students and stuff, and I was wondering, did this seem like it was out of the blue?
Exactly. Exactly. As I said, that I gone to co-education school in Helmand. In 1972, I just finished the 10th grade and I was going to 11th grade. So in 75, I went to university and we had normal life, I would say. It was not very rich country as you saw it, but people were not aggressive, people were not violent. I mean, as a tourist, did anybody harass you or throw a stone to you? No. And I could not believe when I hear and see most of the things today. I cannot believe when they say that they collect the books written by women and burning it. This was not the case. We were encouraged to write. We were encouraged to get education, as I said. In Helmand is conservative. Currently is one of the worst place, I would say. I gone to co-education school. There's one photo of my class fellows in the university in 78 in the book. We were normal as we. It was not a lot of facilities and a lot of education possibilities. We had only one university in Kabul and one university. Just started in Jalalabad. But people were not aggressive. People were not, we were traveling from Kabul to Helmand by bus with our skirts or with our jeans. Nobody was bothering us without scarf. Nobody was bothering that you have short hair or long hair or you have mini job or you have a jean. Now the men are beaten up that you don't grow your beard, you wear jeans. I was not thinking. And I think the people, the current generation, the generation after 2001, who grown up in a little freedom, kind of freedom environment, a free environment, access to education or access. For them it was shocking, the Taliban policy. I was going to cinemas in Kabul. We had some 10, 12 cinemas, and maybe I only did not go to one of them because it was very much male dominated. In Kute Sangi, in the west part of Kabul. But now the cinema, people cannot even think about it.
Folks, we have time for one more question, and I've got a questioner here.
So I would just very much like to thank you for coming here, being here, telling us what is possibly something that will happen in our lives that is completely uncomfortable and unknown and a surprise. And it's so important what you're telling us and that we hear it, we take it in, and we look around and see what's happening in our world. So thank you so much.
Thank you for coming in this cold, rainy, windy weather tonight to listen to an Afghan story.